If you're a sales analyst, one of the highest value projects you can work on for the sales team that you support is helping them prioritize perhaps the many customers they have in their territory and helping them identify which ones to contact today. Hi, I'm Brian Amrine with Value Driven Analytics, and in this video, we'll talk about several ways that you can do just that. Help your sales team know who to contact today. If that sounds good to you, let's head over to our PowerPoint.
This is an interesting one. We might have a sales manager come to us and say, today my sales team has about 1,000 customers for each salesperson in their territory that they could potentially visit. And each salesperson has their own way of determining when and which customers to visit and how often. But I feel like we should be able to give them some data-based recommendations. Is there any way that we can use analytics to help? Yes, sales manager, there certainly is. Now, a very basic way of doing this might be to just sort your customers by the amount of sales they've had recently or over the last year. Say, hey, we should probably be spending more time with the customers that do more business with us. And then as we have time, maybe we'll eventually get down to some of the customers that haven't done business with us. It's a very simple approach. It makes the assumption that our time is that we're actually, when we spend time with those higher volume customers, that we are indeed able to continue to generate incremental business with them. But at a certain point, that may or may not be the case. At a certain point, there could be diminishing returns. Maybe a salesperson's visiting an account so much that it's taking time away from their business. And so how can we figure out what that break point is? At what point should we move to the next customer on the list? Should it really be based on sales? And even if it were, again, at what point when would we make the time to visit maybe a customer who hasn't done any sales with us or has done less sales with us? Well, that's where a model that takes into account the incremental impact of a sales action, an email, a phone call, a visit, each of those have different costs associated with them. But what if you could build a model, and it would be based on the past, looking at when we've called, when we've visited, when we've emailed certain customers versus when we haven't, and understanding what was the incremental impact of that touch point. This is a great opportunity to use what are called interaction terms in a regression model. So we would want to understand, we have all these characteristics about the customer, maybe what business segment they're in, what geography they're in, when the last time they were called was. We're going to factor that in so we can understand diminishing returns, all kinds of things we know about the customer. And we would be looking at interactions between when that customer was called or emailed or visited, all different variables here. What was the impact of that on their sales and then maybe the next month or two or three? There are so many different ways you could set up this model, but I would say this is a great opportunity to build a response model. You build that model and essentially you can run each customer through and say, what would my model predict that sales would be for this time period coming up if I called that customer today versus if I didn't call that customer today? If I visited that customer today versus if I didn't visit them today, if I emailed them today versus not. And what you would want to do after calculating that for each, this is all done automatically applied to your whole data set through a tool like Python or SAS or R. For each customer now, you've calculated what that incremental likelihood or that incremental maybe profit that would be driven if you were to call them or visit them or email them would be. And you can rank order them by that. And that's a starting point for figuring out who you might call on that particular day. Now you've got to consider the cost side of it. Maybe for certain customers, the drive time could be higher. So you'd want to maybe consider that cost in the equation as well. And then how you route customers, right? If there's one that is, maybe there's a group of customers that you think would have a high incremental value of a call and they're close to each other. There's one out here. Maybe you save that one for the next day because it would just be a really big off route drive time to get there. So many factors to consider, but I would start with that incremental sales model and then combine it with some kind of a perhaps geographical clustering model that could build an optimized route for it, and then bake in the cost of each of those touch points. Yeah, hopefully that's helpful.
If you like this video, I hope you'll consider liking it formally. And if you'd like to see more analytics, data science, and leadership training videos, please consider subscribing to the channel. Finally, if you have any questions on what we discussed today, please leave a comment and I'll try to respond to it as soon as possible. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.